What happens when one of the world's biggest stars walks onto a stadium stage, and suddenly an entire city seems to stop and listen? What happens when tens of thousands of people gather under the lights, expecting a spectacular concert, but end up witnessing something much more intimate? A night filled with voices, signs, smiles, and one unforgettable heart gesture from Jin. Baltimore experienced that moment. And by the time the final lights began to fade, one phrase was spreading across social media: Jin lights up Charm City. But why did Jin's 2 nights in Baltimore create such a powerful reaction? And what happened inside M&T Bank Stadium that made fans around the world feel as though they had been there themselves? Let's go back to the beginning. On August 11th and 12th, BTS brought the Arirang World Tour to Baltimore, Maryland, with 2 highly anticipated performances at M&T Bank Stadium. And this was already a historic occasion before Jin even stepped onto the stage. M&T Bank Stadium became the setting for what was described as the first solo K-pop concert in the venue's history. Think about that for a moment. A stadium that has hosted enormous sporting events was transformed into a sea of purple, lights, banners, cameras, and excited army. Thousands of fans gathered not simply to watch a concert, but to experience a moment they had been waiting for. And then Jin appeared. Suddenly, all the anticipation had somewhere to go. The screams rose, the cameras came up, the signs were lifted, and the stadium became completely focused on the stage. But there was one thing that immediately stood out: Jin's voice. Throughout the 2 performances, his live vocals received an enthusiastic response from the audience. There is something different about hearing an artist sing live in a stadium this large. The venue is enormous. The crowd is enormous. The production is enormous. Yet the voice still has to travel through all of it. And Jin did exactly that. His vocals became one of the defining elements of his Baltimore performances, giving fans moments where the sheer size of the stadium seemed to disappear. For a few seconds, it could feel less like tens of thousands of people were watching a global superstar, and more like Jin was simply standing there, singing directly to the people who had come to see him. That contrast is part of what makes these concerts so emotional. Jin is performing on one of the biggest stages imaginable, but at the same time, his interactions with ARMY can be incredibly simple. A look, a smile, a wave, a gesture, and sometimes a heart. That heart became one of the most memorable moments from Baltimore. During ARMY time, fans raised their signs, each one carrying a message of love and support for Jin. Some fans had clearly spent time preparing them. Others simply wanted their feelings to be seen. Then the signs appeared on the stadium screen. Suddenly, messages from individual fans were being shared with an entire stadium. And Jin noticed. While holding one of the signs, he made a heart gesture toward the fans. It was only a small movement, but emotionally, it was enormous. Imagine spending months looking forward to seeing your favorite artist. Imagine traveling to another city. Imagine standing among thousands of other people, wondering whether he might notice your message. Then, for one brief moment, the person you came all that way to see looks back at you and responds. That is the kind of memory that stays with someone. And for Jin, it seemed to be another reminder that ARMY's support is not something he takes for granted. The interaction also captured something special about his relationship with fans. The stage may separate them physically. There may be thousands of people between the artist and the person holding a sign. But moments like this make that distance feel much smaller. And Baltimore continued to produce unforgettable moments throughout both nights. The excitement didn't remain inside M&T Bank Stadium. It spilled directly onto social media. On the first day, hashtags such as SEOKJin, Jin in Baltimore D1, and Jin Charms Bank Stadium appeared among real-time trends on X in the United States and other countries. Then came night 2, and the online reaction continued. #Jin in Baltimore D2 began trending, alongside Jin lights up Charm City and BTS Jin. That phrase is especially interesting. Charm City is Baltimore's nickname, but after Jin's performances, fans turned the phrase into something that felt almost poetic. Jin lights up Charm City, not just with stage lights, not just with screens or production, but with his presence, his voice, his personality, and the energy he shares with the audience. The reaction also showed just how far the Baltimore performances traveled. Someone could be sitting inside the stadium. Someone else could be watching clips from another country. Someone could be following the trending hashtags thousands of miles away. And yet, all of them were experiencing pieces of the same moment. That is the extraordinary thing about a global tour. The concert ends in one physical location, but the emotions continue traveling. A fan captures a video, another shares a photograph. Someone posts a message, another person sees it and realizes, I wish I had been there. And suddenly, Baltimore becomes a shared memory for ARMY around the world. Jin himself also helped keep that connection alive. After the performances, he shared behind-the-scenes photos from the Baltimore concert venue and his waiting room on Instagram. For fans, those photographs offered something different from the polished concert footage. They provided a glimpse behind the curtain. The stage is where Jin becomes the performer everyone came to see. But backstage, there are quiet moments. Waiting, preparing, thinking about the performance, getting ready to step in front of thousands of people. Those behind-the-scenes images gave fans another way to experience the Baltimore stop, not just as a spectacular concert, but as a real chapter in Jin's journey through the Arirang World Tour. And then came the farewell. After 2 nights of singing, cheering, lights, signs, and unforgettable interactions, Jin spoke to the audience during his closing remarks. He said that he had a really wonderful time. He thanked everyone for making it possible for him to leave Baltimore and head toward the next venue, feeling good and full of energy. And then came the promise to meet again. There is something particularly emotional about that kind of ending. Because concerts are temporary. The lights eventually go off. The music stops. The screens go dark. The crowd begins to leave. People fold up their banners and put away their cameras. The stadium slowly becomes quiet again. But the memories remain. For the fans in Baltimore, the final words were not simply a goodbye. They were a see you again. And that promise carries special meaning during a world tour. Because every city is another chapter. Every stadium creates another collection of memories. Every audience leaves something behind. And Baltimore clearly left Jin with an enormous amount of energy. What makes this stop even more remarkable is the combination of history and emotion. This was a milestone for K-pop at M&T Bank Stadium. It was another major American stop on the Arirang World Tour. It brought thousands of fans together. It created international social media trends. And it gave Jin another opportunity to demonstrate why his live performances continue to generate such passionate reactions. But beyond all of those achievements, there was something much more human. Fans wanted to see Jin. Jin wanted to perform for them. They brought their signs. He noticed them. They cheered. He responded. They gave him their energy. He promised to return. And somewhere between those moments, a stadium concert became something much more personal. That may be the real reason Baltimore became so emotional. Because the biggest moments weren't necessarily the loudest ones. Sometimes they were the smallest. A fan holding a sign. Jin making a heart. A smile appearing on the giant screen. A voice carrying across the stadium. A final thank you. A promise to meet again. Those are the details people remember. Years from now, fans may not remember every single second of the production. They may not remember exactly when every light turned on, but they will remember how they felt when Jin looked toward the audience. They will remember the sound of the crowd. They will remember standing among thousands of people and realizing that everyone around them had come for the same reason. And they will remember that Baltimore became part of Jin's story. From August 11th to August 12th, M&T Bank Stadium was no longer simply a stadium. For 2 unforgettable nights, it became a place where Jin and ARMY shared another chapter together. A chapter filled with powerful live vocals. A chapter filled with laughter, excitement, and emotion. A chapter filled with fan signs and heartfelt messages. A chapter that quickly became a global social media moment. And a chapter that ended with Jin saying, in his own way, that he would see everyone again. So when fans say, Jin lights up Charm City, they may be talking about a concert, but perhaps they are really talking about something much deeper. Because Jin didn't just walk onto a Baltimore stage and perform, he connected with the people waiting for him. He listened to their voices. He accepted their love. He gave them his own energy in return. And for 2 nights, the distance between a worldwide superstar and the fans who adore him seemed to disappear. The stadium was enormous. The crowd was enormous, the moment was enormous. Yet somehow, Jin made it feel personal. And when the final night ended, Baltimore was left with something that no stage production could create. A memory, a feeling, a promise. And perhaps, for everyone who was there, one simple thought: Jin didn't just visit Charm City, he made it shine.